He has never cost a single club a transfer fee, not once in 26 years. Yet his release clause was set so high it dwarfed his own market value by a factor of 4. His published salary is a fraction of his real income. The owner himself admitted the true figure is more than double. Since he arrived, one club went from the middle of the pack to the most valuable in its entire league. Revenue nearly quadrupled. But here is the twist. League-wide attendance actually fell the year after he joined. Without him, the league would have set a record. So how did a player who never cost a transfer fee become the most valuable asset in sports history? The answer is not about goals or trophies. It is about a contract clause, a hidden ownership stake, and a single decision that turned loyalty into leverage. This is the story of how zero became a billion. He has never cost a single club a transfer fee, not once in 26 years. That is the central paradox of Lionel Messi's career, a player valued in the billions yet acquired for zero. Every other superstar commands a price tag that reshapes a club's finances. Messi simply walks away when his contract ends. The loophole is not a secret. It is written into every deal he signs. His Barcelona contract contained a release clause so astronomical that no club on earth could trigger it. The clause was set at a figure roughly 4 times his own peak market value, a number designed not to be paid, but to be a wall. No one could buy him out. Therefore, the only way to acquire Messi was to wait until his contract expired and negotiate directly with the player. He became a perpetual free agent by design. In 2021, he left Barcelona for Paris Saint-Germain on a free transfer. 2 years later, he left PSG for Inter Miami. Again, for nothing. The clubs paid zero. Yet his presence transformed Inter Miami from a mid-tier franchise into the most valuable club in the league. Revenue surged. The stadium filled. In 2017, Barcelona did something desperate. They gave Lionel Messi a contract with a release clause so astronomical, nearly 4 times his own peak market value, that they believed no club on earth could trigger it. It was a paper fortress, a guarantee of loyalty written in zeros. But the fortress had a flaw. It wasn't the clause itself, it was the crumbling foundation beneath it. Barcelona was drowning in debt. Years of reckless spending, inflated wages, disastrous signings, a stadium renovation that bled cash, had left the club financially crippled. La Liga imposed strict salary caps. The club couldn't register new players, couldn't even renew Messi's contract without breaking the rules. So they asked him to take a pay cut, the greatest player in history, the man who had never cost them a single transfer fee. They asked him to accept less. He said no, not out of greed, out of principle. He had given everything. He had stayed when others left. He had taken less before. But this time, the club's mismanagement was not his problem to solve. The release clause expired. The contract ran down. And on a quiet summer day in 2021, Barcelona announced that Lionel Messi would not return. The player who had never cost a transfer fee walked away for exactly that, zero. But where does a free agent worth a fortune go next? What happened when he landed in Paris? Subscribe to decode the business behind sports legends. Paris 2021. A player who had never cost a club a transfer fee walked into the Parc des Princes for free. The deal was a statement. PSG had assembled a supernova. Neymar, Mbappé, and now Messi. But the experiment was built on a contradiction. The club needed him to win the Champions League, yet the team's structure, its frantic press, its reliance on individual brilliance, none of it fit a player who had spent 2 decades inside Barcelona's possession machine. The first season ended in a round of 16 exit. The second, another early knockout. The crowd whistled. The romance never arrived. So why did he stay? Because the contract was a golden cage. A salary that made him the highest paid player in the league. A city that offered privacy. But the project was hollow. PSG was a stepping stone, not to another European giant, but to something no one saw coming. A club in Miami, barely a decade old, with a stadium that held 18,000 people. A league that had never signed a player of his stature. The move made no sense on paper, but the numbers told a different story. Inter Miami's owner had a plan, and Messi had a clause, a free transfer again. 2 years in France, zero transfer fees, zero Champions League titles. Yet the real prize was waiting across the Atlantic. How did Miami become the real winner? Messi lands in Miami, and the numbers start to move. Not on the pitch, off it. Inter Miami was the 10th most valuable club in MLS. Then he signs. No transfer fee, zero. Suddenly the club is worth a fortune, the most valuable in the league. Revenue tripled. The stadium sells out every night. Sponsors line up. The owner tells Bloomberg Messi's all-in income runs into the tens of millions a year. But here's the contradiction. The league's overall attendance dropped. Sportico found MLS would have set its record without him. The tide lifted one boat and left the rest behind. Miami becomes a destination. Celebrities courtside, global media attention. The club's valuation balloons. But the economics are fragile. One man drives the entire machine. If he leaves, what happens to the billion-dollar valuation? The league built its marketing around him. Yet the numbers show a league that grew around him, not because of him. So the question hangs in the air. Is the league better off with him? Messi's arrival in Miami was supposed to lift the entire league. Instead, the numbers tell a stranger story. Attendance across MLS dropped 5.4% in 2025. That's not a blip, it's a trend. Sportico crunched the data and found something sharper. Without Messi, the league would have set its all-time attendance record. His presence actually pulled the average down. Think about that. The most famous player in the world plays every home game in one city. Fans in other markets stay home. They don't see him live, so the league's total gate shrinks. His global appeal is real, but it's concentrated. Miami's stadium sells out everywhere else, empty seats. Therefore, the paradox sharpens. Inter Miami's value soared from a mid-tier club to the league's most valuable. A staggering jump. Revenue tripled. But the league itself? It's paying a price for that concentration. One man's $80 million annual paycheck, reported by the owner himself, is a bet that his star power will pull the whole ecosystem upward. Yet the data suggests the opposite. His gravity bends the league's shape. But it also leaves shadows. What's the real cost of his $80 million paycheck? The secret isn't a salary, it's a system. Messi costs nothing to acquire. So every dollar a club spends on him goes straight to his personal brand, not a transfer fee. That changes the math. A normal superstar arrives with a price tag that must be amortized, recouped, sold on. Messi arrives as pure upside, therefore Inter Miami didn't buy a player. They bought a gravitational center. His presence pulls in sponsors, jersey sales, global attention, revenue that didn't exist before. The club's valuation doubled, then doubled again. But here's the twist. The model only works if the player is bigger than the league. Messi is. Yet the league itself saw attendance dip without him. That's the fragility. One man, zero transfer fees, but the entire ecosystem tilts on his presence. Other stars see this. They watch a free agent reshape a franchise without a single dollar changing hands between clubs. The next generation will demand the same leverage, control over their own movement, their own value. But can any other player carry that weight? Messi's magic isn't just skill, it's scarcity. He is the only one who never cost a fee, yet built a billion-dollar empire from nothing but his name. Could this work for the next superstar? He became the most valuable asset in sports history by being the one asset that could never be bought. No transfer fee, no price tag, no club ever owned him. They only rented his presence. That $0 cost was his greatest leverage. It meant he controlled his own value, his own brand, his own exit. Every free transfer was a renegotiation of power. Barcelona set a release clause that was a fiction, a number so high it was never meant to be paid. It was a wall, but when the wall cracked, he walked for nothing. Paris paid him a fortune in wages, but they never paid a fee. Miami did the same. He arrived, and the club's value doubled, revenue tripled, yet the league itself barely moved. That is the contradiction. His empire is built on being the one player who cannot be bought, but that also means he cannot be sold. He is a free agent forever. The lesson true value isn't in the price you command, but in the leverage of being indispensable yet unattached. The moment you have a price, you become a commodity. The moment you have none, you become a monopoly. But Messi's $0 empire is just one hidden monopoly. In our next episode, we uncover the man who built a billion-dollar business from a single patent and never sold a single product. This is the Monopoly Matrix, where money meets the game.